this morning that what I'm going to share with you is the 7 principles underlying spiritual intelligence. By the way, I have a little confessions that I'm not a psychologist. I'm a pastor. So what I'm going to bring with you is from the spiritual and a biblical perspective. Of course, I will go through with you what do I mean spiritual intelligence. Okay. Now, before we go there, let me take you a little bit further. Now here, John Maxwell, and he said there are stages in the leadership. Now, the first stage is by position, by right. That's when we are elected, or some of us, we are appointed. But that is by position through the right, you become a leader. But that is only the beginning stage. Then you cannot just remain in the stage. People are watching at you. People are looking at you. You have to communicate with them. You have to relate with them. Okay? So your relationship will open their mind, will make you acceptance of your leadership. Then you cannot just remain there. You have to move on, bring in some production changes in the organization institutions that's gained to you. Without the production, people will get tired of you. That is called the production or resource stage. Then also you have to come into the stage that people development. You have to be secure emotionally, produce more people, train more people, so it's more capable than us. Then, according to the Maxwell, the fifth stage, perhaps the highest, is the personhood respect. At this stage, we no longer need an office. You no longer need a title. You no longer need a position. This is who you are. People will always respect you because you have proven your life, your ministry, and your leadership. Leadership is a long journey. It is a lifelong learning and growing uh, process that we have to. In this journey, there are times that you will be alone. There will be times that you will be in the valley. There are times that you'll be at the top of the mountain. But God who calls you has promised that He will be with you always. Always remember, the God who's called you will be with you, will be beside you, behind you. Sometimes you may not be able to see Him with your spiritual eyes, see Him physically, but you can always look for Him with your spiritual eyes. Just remember that He is always faithful. Now, before we go into that one, we know that we are in the Adventist movement. That is always a change coming us, right? Now we are at the beginning of the term, but at the end of this term, 2030, that is also a change will come again. Now that is what our leaders of the Southern Asia Pacific Division is preparing us, that to begin with the end in mind. Now here, enjoy every opportunity you have. Okay, this is one of the blessings being a leader that the church provides. And yesterday, Pastor Jason Adam has mentioned that the church, the division has put up lots of investment to develop leadership development, the resources that the Lord has given to us. But here one thing is importantly be benefited. Importantly benefited. Because I look at and notice some of you are very focused. Some of you are very serious. You sit, you take time, you invest yourself, you listen, you take notes. That is, you may be benefited. It's not only we come and sit here, but when we go back, what we do, how will we further train our team? That is the whole purpose. So enjoy every opportunity you have. Importantly, be benefited. Now, people don't grow automatically. To grow, we must be intentional. We must be intentional. We have to be focused. And then we have to learn. This is not that easy. Because to grow, we must be very intentional. Now, here is in the leadership journey, keep learning to make a difference. When you talk about learning, I think Dr. Ginger, you will agree with me. There are 3 things that I always emphasize. We always have to keep learning because the world is changing, right? That is one stage. Then we have to unlearn because the Lord will put you in different places. You cannot continue with the same thing that you have learned because you have to adjust. Some of the things that you have to unlearn. Then the third is that you have to relearn so that you can be relevant and that you can be more fruitful and effective. Pastor Arthur Cole always reminded us in the presidential. I know that you all are coming from different division. What you do in your division. Sometimes we talk about in SSD, said, Sam, you are no longer in SSD. So now you are serving the world church. So there is time for you to learn. Keep learning. Never stop learning, regardless of your age, regardless of your term. Then secondly, unlearn some of the things that's no longer relevant and relearn so that you will be more fruitful and effective. And now here's the promise that you take hold. If we are faithful to his calling, he will make us fruitful in our calling. Always let us remind ourselves with that promise of the Lord. Now, 7 principles underlying spiritual intelligence. Now, I'm not going to talk about this IQ and AQ. You know about it, but I'm going to talk about the SQ, spiritual intelligence. But what do I mean, SQ? Now here, that is, SQ is dealing about meanings of life, values and purpose of life. Now, that is when we talk about spiritual intelligence, we are talking about our relationship with God and understanding God's perspective, heavenly perspective, which is opposite with this worldly perspective. And then above all, that is spiritual intelligence is dealing with what do I live for? Giving you a greater perspective, understanding life and the purpose, the meaning of the purpose of life. Therefore, now the IQ dealing with thinking and the AQ dealing with the feelings. Now, SQ is dealing with a relationship, our relationship with God, which further impact us how to relate with one another. So when we have a vertical relationship is strong, our horizontal relationship will be impacted as well. Now, spiritual intelligence is the adaptive use of spiritual information to facilitate everyday problem solving and goal attainment. Now, as a leader, you will be facing many challenges. There will be up and down in your journey of leadership. But with this having the spiritual intelligence, you can remain focused and accomplish what the Lord has called you and then he has graciously entrusted to you. Now, spiritual intelligence is also the ability to act with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner and outer peace, regardless of the circumstances. The things that are happening around the world, economic crisis, challenges we have, sometimes is the of the devaluation of the currency. Sometimes we give you some challenges, but with having spiritual intelligence, you will be able to rest in peace and the living things God has continue to lead with the wisdom and with the compassion that to accomplish the golden. Here, Ellen White also talk about spiritual intelligence. She said, if there were more praying among us, more exercise of a living faith, and a less dependence upon someone else, she said, we will be far in advance of where we are today in spiritual intelligence. Now, I think if we talk about spiritual intelligence, and we have to also think what our president, General Conference President Pastor Cole, and his focus and his emphasis is that he always reminds us that grounded in the Bible and a focus on the mission, that is a spiritual intelligence. Now, when you talk about spiritual intelligence, it's the human capacity to understand life, okay, the life that he has given and the calling that he has given to us, and to live in alignment with the ultimate meaning, purpose, and truth. This is in a nutshell. Of course, we can see Apostle Paul also talk about many things here, and that I have a few scripture texts for us to to look into. These are like a Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, for to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. That is spiritual intelligence. Then also he said, I have become in all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. This is spiritual intelligence that we all need because we have to face with many challenges, many problems, many issues, many legal problems. We have Elder Totes with us here. Anytime we have to call him, seek counsel. So when the church in this world, we're facing many things, that's only IQ and EQ may not be able to sustain us through. But we also need to have our spiritual intelligence. That's why Jesus spent night daily seeking wisdom from the Father. That gave him wisdom and understanding to remain faithful and obedient to the Father and focus on his mission. Now, talking about the 7 principles underlying spiritual intelligence is number 1 is calling. I visited one division during the division council, and then I get to know that leader, and then I because I do not know him before, I say, Pastor, before you were called as one of the officers of the division, where do you serve? And he looked at to me, first man. And then I myself, I never heard that expression. I heard the first lady, but never first man. And then I say, Pastor, my English is not good. Can you explain to me what is first man? President. So that's first man. then he was giving the chance to speak, and in the festival, and then he stood up in the public. He said, I want to publicly thank my president. He is the one who recommended me. He is the one who called me to be secretary. My president, in front of everyone, I want to tell you, I will be faithful to you. I serve you. I will be loyal obedience to you. Wow. In my mind, what a brave man. Probably his understanding of calling is different. Calling is not election, the outcome of election. Calling is much more greater, deeper, richer than the result of the election. Of course, president is instrumental, right? And then that is we are grateful to that. But understand our calling is much more different. Now, if we talk about calling, we always have to remind ourselves we are here only because of the mission. That is Ellen White. Council reminds us clearly the church was organized for service and its mission is to carry the gospel to the world. That's it. We all are here for that mission. Regardless of whatever we are the president, executive secretary, or we are we are the treasurer, CEO, director, whatever it is. These are different ministries, but we are all here for the mission church. Now, when it comes to calling, there's a lot we can learn from Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul here said in the Philippians chapter 3, verses 8 to 9, he said, to me, though I am the very least of all the saints, take note, very least. He realized himself unworthiness. And then he said, this grace was given to me. This grace was given. When it comes to calling, that is, we always remember, we all are here only because of grace, not a necessity. God can call anyone else to be serving in our place, but he is so gracious. Then he said, this calling was to preach to the Gentiles, to bring to light for everyone what is the plan of God. That's it. Let us not forget it, our ultimate purpose of our calling. The reason I'm saying it, there are times that you will get confused. You will be busy with many of your itineraries and activities and meetings and agendas and activities. But don't forget, we have been called for the mission. When we talk about calling, let us always keep in mind it is about grace. And it is about God. We are in his kingdom, where he wants to be, where he wants us to, what he wants us to do. That is, we are in his hand. That's why always Apostle Paul relate himself servant of God. That a servant means like a slave. That a slave always live up to the will of his master. Always have the assurance that you are in the right time at the right place. God may have a plan for you, maybe the next term, but at this time, the Lord has placed you. God never make a mistake. It is divine providential. They always have an inner conviction, assurance that we are called in the right time at the right place. Now, here that um, there are always, people live in these three levels of life. The majorities are in the level 1, which is level of survival. People in this level do not discover the real purpose that God has called them for. They just hang on there, live from paycheck to paycheck, month to month, just hanging on there. They could not fully discover the purpose that God has. But the second level is a level of success. People in this level, they are very successful, but they don't have satisfaction. That's why we have to move on to the third level with the level of significance. People in this level are only those who have fully discovered the plans that God has for them. They live up to that. They have no regret in their life, but only a few that make up to that level of significance. Now, second principle underlying spiritual intelligence is commitment. Then when you talk about commitment, we all are committed, but there are sometimes our commitment is subjective. Sometimes it depends on the situation, right? But now when you look at the commitment, then also lesson we can learn from Paul. Paul was very committed person. He said, Paul, a servant of Christ Jesus, called to be an apostle, set apart for the gospel of God. Now you can see Paul's commitment to his calling was very clear. That he see himself as called to be an apostle, to carry the gospel to the Gentile. And a chosen, set apart for the gospel of God. And he committed his calling as a servant of God. Totally surrendered, totally submissive, with passion he carry on because he knows the purpose. He discovered that is a calling for him is because of through grace. But sometimes, one time I attended one of the advisory, and then I gave a recognition, to the uh, division secretary that invited me, and thank you, the I tell you so and so the name and the secretary of the division, and then he corrected me right there on the platform that not the secretary, executive secretary, pastor. So you see, sometimes people have this worldly term becoming a priority. Actually, division secretary is it is already high, but for them, the word executive is the key. So the Apostle Paul, it never get confused. He knew exactly what he was called for, and he was committed. Now, when you look at commitment, and the Apostle Paul reminded in his last word that I share with you often on this one, and he reminded Timothy that know your master. Without knowing your master personally, individually, you will not able to commit yourself to him. And he said, know your mission. He goes on and in chapter 2 of the second Timothy, he talk about that how he should carry, he gave it the 7 images, how to carry his mission. And is to be committed as a steward, as a soldiers, as a farmer, as an athlete with a strong will determination, as a builder, and also as a servant who is totally committed. I don't have time to go into all those things. Then here, Apostle Paul, and even to the end, how committed. Yesterday, you heard from the other presenters that Apostle Paul, for I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. Apostle Paul knew exactly what is coming. He knew that he's going to be executed. No regret, no complaint. But rather, he said, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. This is person who understands the calling and who is totally committed. I think one of the purpose that our leader has organized this lead conference is for catch the vision, to catch what is being inspired by these biblical characters that we have today. Now going to the third principle of spiritual intelligence is a character. Character, when it talks about character, there are lots of things we can learn from King Saul and David. Sometimes we may be wondering why God rejected Saul and accepted David. When you look at the sins they committed, seems like the sins that the David committed has a more, more weight than what King Saul has committed. Now hear what God said. I have found David, a man after my own heart. The only difference between King Saul and David is humility. Humility. Saul was majestic and looked every bit like a king on the outside. But David was a king from the heart. That's why God chose David. It was about his heart that God recognized. It's not about their sins, but about their heart, their character. Leaders do mistake from time to time. There is no one that is perfect. We have all our we do have our shortcoming, our failures and our mistake. But let's remember this. God is looking at our heart, not about our mistakes and our failures. Let us become men and women after God's own heart like David. Has a teachable heart, has a humble heart, has a repentant heart, and with a devoted heart. That is what we need as a people who are leading God's people. Now, character is more important than talent and charisma in church leadership. You know why? We are called not only just to impress by people, our education, our nationality perhaps, our look, our gift can impress people and even can influence others. But without the power of God, we cannot impact people. That is another level of the influence. The character is a long term. People's watching us all the time. Now it says that Dwight L. Moody, he said, who we are to God and what we are in the dark. That is character. Yesterday we talked about that is Jesus in the wilderness. I think our experience, when are we alone? When we are alone in our thinking, behind the public, who we are, that is our character. That is our character. Now, Ellen White said, but when men exalt themselves, feeling that they are a necessity for the success of God's great plan, the Lord causes them to be set aside. You're talking about the character. I always remember Elder Cooper, he shared with us, and I share with him. And the pastor, Kademar, he got it by heart. If I ask him now, he can still say it. Right? Now, when you talk about this, he knows it, and then he's very fast. But look at, he just said that it's in a high trace, and then he knows it all. So he got all the words. But you look at here, Excellence is only the step one. Only the, but if you look at all the things, humility is the highest. That is the code of conduct need by the leaders that's being called by God to serve his church. You can have all the other things, but without the humility, without surrendering ourselves to God's, God cannot empower us and accomplish many things to us. Humility is the greatest thing. Look at just King David. He was just a background shepherd, not educated. But during his time, the kingdom of Israel has reached the golden age. No enemy. Everyone look up. And then they have the greatest impact and influence all the neighboring country at the time. The golden era that ever Israel could have is in his time. Because he's humble. And that God power always worked to him. Now here, regarding the character and why I said a true leader is someone who represent God, his character, God's character, and God's purpose to those whom they are called to lead. You know what a great investment that the Lord has to his leader. A true leader is someone who represents God. This is serious. We are called to represent his character, his purpose to those who we are called to lead. It's come with responsibility, with greater accountability. That's why it can be only accomplished only with him, through him, and by him. Of course, I cannot take it because the clock is ticking. The fourth, the principles underlying spiritual intelligence is compassion. Compassion, it is one of the important aspect. That is a spiritual intelligence that we need in the life of leaders. Now we can look at you and I. We are called to be God's shepherd. We cannot be shepherd without loving the sheep. Now we can know that Jesus always, you know, a defined by his compassion. When he looked at the people, the sick and the poor and the needy, he felt compassion. He has compassion. You can see that all the time. You know that programs may grow a church. Compassion always sustains it. Before we lead God's people, we must carry God's heart. Leader, this is one of the challenging, task that is asset that we need in our life. We have to be a balance, compassion and truth together. Our church, Seventh-day Adventist Church, is very known for, people of the book. We have the truth undeniably. All the others accept it. But one thing that is lacking. I've been pastoring a church, and then I have opportunity to go into the church and then worship. I didn't tell anyone. I just went in as quietly I said. Of course, that is, I was in the Philippines for more than 10 years, 13 years. So been away for many years. There are no changes. People, that those who know me probably no longer there. So I went there and I seated in a place. Then seems like a church member there sitting that do not know me. I do not know that person. And then when the church service was singing, the person was singing wholeheartedly, opening the hymn book. But he doesn't even bother to share with me the hymn book that he was singing. That sometimes we can see as a leader, you are called only not to be strong in the leadership, but to be compassionate as well. Compassion and truth must be together because we need compassion, which enable us to discern, to respond, and to act like Christ. Without the compassion, sometimes we maybe can be policy driven. Yesterday, our division president, Pastor Kadema, has expounded on that, that, policy has its own merit to unite us, you know, that is to serve us for the mission, but sometimes it's being abused in many ways. As the leaders, we have to admit that there are times that we have our own bias. We have our prejudice in the name of the policy. We interpret a little different sometimes, than we wished. So compassion is something that we need to. Compassion will help us to listen before speaking, to understand before correcting, and pray before deciding, and then also restore before removing. That's we have a greater impact to those that we are called to move forward. Now, Jesus, the lifestyle of Jesus, you know that it is a lifestyle of love, a lifestyle of compassion, a lifestyle of forgiveness. This we are called to represent Him and His character. That's we will learn a while ago what Ellen White said. It is a lifestyle of caring, service, and sacrifice, and a lifestyle of compassion and passion for mission. Therefore, Apostle Paul said, and now abide faith, hope, love. These three. But the greatest of these is love. We need to be reminded. I have my own experience, which I do not have time to talk about it. But Apostle Paul was very correct. He said, though we may have the gift of tongue, the gift to prophesy, but without love, I am nothing. Without love. And then he said, I gain nothing. Because love, it is the character of God, attributes of God. That's why Apostle Paul, Jesus told the parable. Of course, many times we were taught in the Sabbath school classes in the story, is a love your neighbor as thyself. But this one, Jesus was talking to the church leaders in his time. In this parable, Jesus focused, and the agape is indiscriminate. Now, there are lots of marginalized people wherever you are. There are people, there's a less fortunate, you know, and just recently there's a viral issues that in the news, and then in America, that one of the migrants, I think it's originally from Thai Burma borders. He was that in America, but he was arrested taken by ICE. Then within a day, church members gather together. They are not from our church, okay? They are from the other denomination. Church members gather together. They put their resources together. They, reach out to the different authority, and they try to get the person, to help the person. Somehow that lady has a small child of 6 months old. Some people go to the house and nurse a baby. Some people go to the government office and try to help her to be released. Within a week, she was able to come home. She was released. Then I heard many times, then later, one of our church members in Indianapolis was also taken by ICE. And then when he heard people say, let's pray about it. Let's pray for them. Remember them in our prayer. I think it is something that sometimes that we need to keep in our mind. That is Pastor Abel Banner share with me how they are helping the migrant and the refugee in the country. That is something very encouraging to hear. Pastor Kadema, with your team, how you help that internally displaced people in Thai Burma border. That is something that you have to go beyond extra miles to be able to help them, because they cannot contribute much to the tithe and offering because of the situation that they have. But you value them as they are. This is what is compassion is all about. Then of course, Jesus talk about love and compassion is a right attitude. As a leaders, that not everyone that will love you and are faithful to you. There are people that will be in front of you saying good thing, behind you telling you another thing. They sometimes really discourage you, but you have to love them anyway because you are called to lead with compassion. And also, when you talk about love and compassion, there's an agape treats equally everyone. That is no, because we all have, someone that we like, someone that have the same chemistry, someone that like to us. But we are called to treat everyone with the same, without, um, any reciprocity, give freely what the Lord has blessed. So this is a compassion that we talk about. And also agape practice grace. There's no revenge. Some people say that I can forgive, but I cannot forget. You know, Sometimes we carry those things. But whatever it is, that remember in the First John chapter 4, verse 8, John said, "Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love." This is a very strong. It's same with what Apostle Paul said, right? There is a love, or there's a faith, hope, love. Love is the greatest. And then it said that those who do not love do not know God. As a human being, possessing human nature and tendency, only love comes from God, especially agape love. That's why Jesus go throughout the scripture, reminding his people in that to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with him. That is what he reminds us. Now look, go to the next one. It's a collaboration. Okay, but we talk about collaboration, integration interchangeably. But when you talk about integration, you talk about more on the technical aspect of it, maybe the system, the process. But when you talk about collaboration, it's a team, it's a people that you collaborate. Now, when you talk about collaboration, we are talking about church is a body. It's not a solo platform. Our World Church President, Pastor Kohler, always remind us that the departments to work together, complementing one another. Sometimes we have a loss of soul. But when we are united, when are integrated, we can accomplish much more. Now, collaborations protects against blind spot. As a leader, the Lord does not give us all the gift that we need as a leader. But He's the greatest. It is among our team. But when we are united, when we work together, then we can complement one another and then decrease or even eliminate a blind spot that could happen with the team. And a collaboration model unity to the church. When people see the officers are together, they are united for the mission that inspire members to join hands to move forward to accomplish the mission to hasten the Lord's coming. And also, church does not need a hero, but a spirit-led team. Pastor Kohler always emphasize this one. We are stronger, we go further, we arrive faster. And then he added just recently, we are united when we are together, when we are integrated. Now, the sixth, the second last one, it is the coaching. This is very important because our church operates on a committee system, not presidential system. That we have to be very intentional, helping people to grow better than us, so that the church will never deprive of a better leader, to lead the church and to accomplish God's mission. Now, yes, the coaching is a biblical. We can see that in the Bible there are many. There is a Paul and then a Timothy, and then we can see that is I have mentioned there. Leadership blind spots are real. That we cannot learn all these things. Now, communication patterns, that sometimes those who have gone before, leaders who have gained lots of experience, wisdom to help those who are coming, helping them with the communication patterns, understanding, because we speak differently based on our culture. And also emotional responses, decision making, biases, and then relational weaknesses. This now look at here There are biblical model coaching that we can see. The Moses and the Jethro, structural coaching. Jesus and the disciple, developmental coaching or mission coaching. Then we have Paul and Timothy, generational coaching. And then we have many, so forth, and biblical coaching that we can see in the Bible. Now, my time is up. The last one of the principle underlying spiritual intelligence, what you can think of. This could be what I well, there are many. Can you make a guess? Okay, you can see that I have make all, begin with C. So the last one also will be C. Huh? Okay, it's very close, but the same thing more or less. But I've chosen the consecration. Okay, it's very close. Thank you for guessing. Appreciate it. Now here, uh, there are we have to admit there are confusions of leaders in leadership. Often we got confused. Position with mission in leadership. We always been reminded that the Christian leadership is about mission, not about position. But there are people got confused. Now sometimes people are confused with duty with devotion and in the ministry. It doesn't matter that the more we are engaged in the activities, trips, meetings, doesn't mean that we have a greater devotion. Sometimes they are different. Duty, responsibility, and devotion, they are two different things. And also common with the communion in worship. You know, worship is a communion with God. It is not a common thing. Sometimes we tend to get confused and then take it in a formal way. And also, sometimes we get confused doing with being in our calling. They are two different things. They're two different things. That's why Ellen White counsels us that the greatest knowledge is to know ourselves. She is absolutely right. That's the greatest knowledge is to know ourselves. Now, when we are the leader, people cannot talk to us. They will not talk to us because they have such a great respect. And they said, when the first year in our office, we open and we listen to many people, But the second year, we listen to only those who are around us. And then the third year, we listen only those who are very close to us. And the fourth year, we listen only to ourselves. But here, that is ministry idolatry. That is one of this, this is according to the Dave Crafts, he said, growing and the greatest mistake is allowing ministry to replace Jesus. I think many of us, we can understand about this one. That's why here, Henry Nouwen said, the main obstacle to loving God is service for God. We have to be careful that we don't spend time that the Lord has blessed, resources that He has given to us on the ministry itself. God wants us to spend time with Him. That ask God to give us a wisdom to have a balanced life. Balance actually between these three things: our spirituality, our family life, and our ministry. These three things ask God to give us wisdom to live out in a balanced way. That's why Jesus said, let us remember always that what Jesus counseled to Martha, that he said that only one thing is needed. Mary has made the right choice and it will not be taken away from her. Our office is temporary, 5 years, one term. If the Lord is gracious, another term, 10 years after that is gone. But let us not forget, one thing is necessary, that this thing is sitting at the feet of Jesus, consecrating ourselves, surrendering ourselves, learn from Him, seek His guidance and wisdom. That's why here the Perry just said, he said, leadership is a relationship. That's it. Nothing stronger than that. Leadership is relationship. Now that Jesus made this classic, teaching counsel to His disciples. We all know this one. Abide in me and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruits of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. Without me, you can do nothing. Now here Jesus make it very clear. Reproduction is promised only through connection. Fruitfulness is a promise through relationship. Without connection, abiding, connectedness, without the relationship, there will be no fruitfulness, there will be no reproduction. And in closing, hear what Ellen White said. The more closely we connect ourselves with the source of light and power, the greater light will be shed upon us. The greater the power will be ours to work from God. May these 7 principles underlying spiritual intelligence will be an inspiration, wisdom, asset on your journey that the Lord has called you graciously to serve Him, to serve His church, to serve His people, to prepare one another, to prepare His church, to prepare this world for His soon coming. Let's continue to be a strong pillar of our church, and together let us continue to hasten the Lord's soon coming. May the Lord bless you.